corporatized institutional slavery that we are in right now, enslaving the American people to debt.
But under my administration, the great betrayal of America is over. America is no longer for sale.
Reality is...
If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. The Bank of the United States is one of the most deadly hostiles existing against the principles and form of our Constitution. I have two great enemies, the Southern Army in front of me and the financial institutions in the rear. Of the two, the one in the rear is the greatest enemy. Do you think it's a coincidence that we can buy 1/100th of what we could afford a century ago? Did you know that our failed institutions have made it standard to tell people that inflation or the government's secret tax is normal with a growing economy? They don't tell you that growth without inflation is possible, as long as you increase the factors of production. But isn't that what we've been doing since the Industrial Revolution? So why is our currency constantly being devalued? Did you know that we used to have no income tax? It was only since 1913 when a dimwit named Woodrow Wilson incorporated two things, passing a bill that started the income tax and the Federal Reserve. And since then, the most unconstitutional acts ever taken by a financial entity is formally referred to as monetary policy. The central banks are responsible for enslaving the American people to debt and is making our currency useless compared to the value it promised before. It's why when Obama was in, the interest rates were steady, because the corrupted agenda in the office was in line with the corrupt agenda of the central bank. In fact, at that point, they were telling us that everyone should enjoy the small wage increase that they managed to achieve, telling us that we shouldn't expect much more growth. You know, that it wasn't going to get any better. So if it wasn't going to get any better, answer me this. Why is the bottom 10% wage growth outpacing the top 10% wage growth for the first time in like forever? Why has the stock market grown in 17 trillion in value, adding almost 70% in just 2019? Why hasn't the coronavirus, the virus that is used by the fear-mongering globalists that are trying to create economic downturn everywhere, brought us down yet? It's because the patriots have been building a transitional economy, the manufacturing powerhouse. In fact, our president is building up the central bank institution, their own economic system, all the while creating our next step. And this next step will bring us out of the corporatized institutional slavery that we are in right now. So what's happening around the world? China invested $5 trillion back into their economy. In fact, Trump and Xi just created the biggest trade deal in history. And because we are universal, because the patriots are making big moves, Trump created a $3 billion deal with India, as well as Korea, Japan, and other countries too. But think carefully. Do you think the centralized banking system wants this kind of economic prosperity? Do you think they want companies to move out from the supply chain created in China? Do you think they want the US to create all these new bilateral trade agreements with other countries? Heck no. Hell no. And a perfect example of this is Trump planning to create a new trade deal with the UK now that they've escaped the European Union. He is demolishing the current power structure of the global establishment. Their anti-human breakaway governance structure, them trying to militarize the European Union, them trying to control all of the money through the European Union, their efforts in trying to militarize the UN, their efforts to make China the technological testing ground for authoritarianism, as well as absolute corporatization. It's all the same thing. And speaking of the UK, they said that Brexit would cause UK to have an economic crash, World War III, all of the above. But in reality, it is outperforming the Eurozone. More people are working than ever before. The UK stock exchange has surged. Exports are up. And most importantly, they're attracting the most investments out of any other country, excluding totalitarian China. So do you think England is drowning? Or do you think they're having a 1776 moment? I think they're having a 1776 moment. In fact, no country has become poorer as a result of more self-governing. Yes, it's the opposite. Globalism is often responsible for trashing countries, especially third world developing countries. And like in America, after the people have observed the hypocrisy, the injustice, the corruption, especially in our legislative bodies, we are having a united awakening like never before. And a new study showed aid disbursements to highly aid-dependent countries often coincide with offshore bank accounts increasing in deposits under the name of secrecy and private wealth management. Pure corruption. Local officials are often the ones that steal the most money and hide it in personal offshore accounts. I mean, come on. Don't we see through all of this by now? This is the classic money laundering that happens in the US. Think Ukraine, Burisma. Think all that aid we sent to Puerto Rico. We don't even give our own states that much aid. And of course, the Puerto Ricans uncovered and exposed all of their self-interested, corrupted officials. And this study concluded that around 7.5% is leaked out of a lot of the aid that is being sent to these countries. Think about that. From all these hundreds of dollars we're giving to other countries, $7.5, $7.50 is being taken for someone's self-interest. They are blatantly stealing. So you see, the elites don't care about anyone, especially the ones that don't have the power to defend themselves. Do you think it's just by chance that all these Ivy Leagues and top companies are taking money and hiring people from China? The American people, in their view, are just workers, tools. And so let's contrast that with Trump. Do you know how hard it is to have a 64% approval rating from medium to small businesses? As my Malaysian friends might say, that's damn hot! Stuff is working out. The people realize that the economy is booming. When you cut back regulations, when you cut back on tax, businesses thrive and become increasingly more profitable. But who doesn't want these independent individuals, small businesses to thrive? The establishment. The established wants boards, corporations, churches, foundations, charities. They don't want the people to have the power. They don't want the people to be responsible. Until the people realize that the same people that have selected our presidents till now are also controlling the money. I mean, come on, even George Soros said that Trump is never going to be elected in 2020 and that he was going to make sure of it. Coronavirus. People realize that the Rothschilds own the Bank of England, that the Rothschilds own the second central bank of the United States. They realize that the Rothschilds financed World War I, that the Rothschilds financed World War II. People realize that the banks invest in our collective misery. People realize that the Vatican has been financed by the Rothschilds since 1829. People realize that the Jesuits own JP Morgan Chase. They own our money supply. All these people are in on it. And it's their job description to crash markets when the bubble is about to explode, to start a war, or create some other tragedy. Coronavirus. So they could cover their tracks and make a profit off of our backs. I mean, they still do this with healthcare. Think about all those lucrative cancer treatments. Vaccines! But guess what? Things are changing. Big Pharma finally took a hit. For the first time in 51 years, prescribed drug prices have dropped. And now we have the right to try. We can risk and save thousands of lives. And you know why that's possible? Because we have a real person in office that isn't so readily willing to sell the American people out to these corporate interests. And the reason why the media is so angry is because the banksters want a puppet. They want someone in office that will put money in their pockets. Instead of creating real wealth and prosperity, they'd rather have us be stuck in a loop. Fossil fuels! And speaking of making money off of misery, all these deep state ploys and narratives that they've tried to put on Trump have failed. First, it was the trade war, the tariffs, which in reality prevented an economic catastrophe as more US companies were moving offshore. And now it's coronavirus. However they try to negatively portray Trump, they always fail to take down their own creation, their own economic bubble. Trump is playing their game perfectly and has revived real growth through their playbook, through their system. And in fact, he is creating the transitional economy. Meanwhile, creating the strongest central bank economy we've ever had. And after a little bit of a breather, it's about to explode. And do you know why that is? It's because all these companies are having to rethink their business models. And the globalists, who are no longer able to manipulate us through China, will now have to deal with all of our businesses rethinking their supply chain. And after that, when we eliminate all these fake two-faced officials, all these rotten little scum, we will see something we have never seen before. We will experience something that we once thought unimaginable. Fam, we used to not even pay tax. I'm gonna say that again. We used to pay the government nada. Absolutely nothing. It's time for us to take our chains off. This is your cue.
So you gotta wake up. Acting like it's so new when you know it.